This part of the video is going to be a bit more informal because after a lot of effort on my part and messing around and rewriting the script and going through the movie, I decided that really the best way to go about this in order for me to cover everything is quite literally to... I wasn't going to do this because I figured it would probably take a little while, but I feel like I kind of have to because I feel like there's... In order to go through the film objectively to talk about whether or not Rey is actually a flawless character, I basically kind of want to clear Rey's name in a sense because I feel like there's been all these accusations of her, and so I just want to go through the film beat by beat and point out some things that I don't think people have mentioned and also confirm some things that people have mentioned. And I'm obviously, you can tell that I rather like Rey as a character, so I'm completely biased. However, I'm trying to be unbiased in this review, but I am probably going to be focusing a lot more on pointing out things that I think are good about her character and trying to dispel some myths. And once again, I am doing this with it in mind of trying to establish, is Rey a flawless character? Is she a poorly written character? Is she boring or uninteresting? Obviously, these are subjective judgments, but they do pull from certain objective elements from the film, so I want to analyze the objective elements to see where are these accusations possibly coming from. So that's what I'm trying to do. First shot of Rey, we don't actually see Rey. She is wrapped up in headgear. Wrapped up, mysterious, also very dirty looking and scroungy. She is reaching into some circuitry box and she rips out something in order to scavenge it. We pull out and we see that she is in some kind of an engine. Of course, those who have seen the film know that she is in the engine of a Star Destroyer. And she is scavenging for parts. This is her job. This is what she does. She climbs around inside of these dangerous things all alone day after day, and she pulls out the circuitry of things and just scavenges parts of the ships that apparently are valuable on the market. As you can see, she has to go leaping around in here, which, yes, it's impressive, but it's also very easy to get killed in there because no one is there to spot her. So yes, it is kind of awesome, but she's been doing this from day one, and it's not actually very glamorous work when you think about it. She is a scavenger. She is a vulture. We'll get into that in a moment. This is a particular shot that I wanted to focus on because there's a number of shots like this in the first few scenes of the film where Rey is a tiny little speck in this gigantic thing. This is important because in the language of filmmaking, I don't know how else to interpret this than that the film is trying to say that Rey is a tiny speck in a much bigger picture, or at the very least, that is how Rey feels. She is very small and insignificant. She isn't just another dust mote. And as we'll see later in the film, a number of times she says, I'm just a scavenger, or Kylo Ren says, she's just a scavenger. She's not important, but ta-da, she actually is, because it's trying to reference Luke Skywalker and his plight. So anyway, just wanted to mention that. Then we finally get a reveal on her face. She is sweaty. It is hot. I'd also like to point out that, yes, Daisy Ridley is very attractive, I think. She meets a lot of our typical societal standards of beauty, but nowhere in the film does anybody really comment on this. The only exception is Finn, who asks her if she has a boyfriend, obviously because he's hitting on her, though that's probably because he has never been able to be with a woman ever. So he's probably perfectly happy to take whatever he can get. Sorry to put it that way, but anyway, so established in the film, it is entirely accidental that the actress Daisy Ridley is very attractive because all movie stars are attractive to some high degree. So of course she's going to be attractive, but the character Rey, it is not particularly important. Anyway, she is wrapped up. Then she pulls out her thermos. She barely has any water. She has to bang against the thermos in order to get more out so that she doesn't die of dehydration. She does not have a lot of water. We also haven't seen her eat anything at this point. And then we get another shot of her in comparison to this giant space engine. She is a tiny little speck. If you imagined that thing being turned on, it would completely obliterate her, but fortunately it is dead. She's basically an ant crawling around inside of the corpse of a much more important dead thing. Then we get another shot. Once again, she is small in the frame as she slides down the sand hill, which she obviously had to climb up in order to get into the Star Destroyer, which is tough work. She is sweaty, dirty, and gross. She slides down the hill. She is tiny once again. And then she gets to the bottom of the hill. She has all of her supplies. This is obviously routine for her, and then she has to haul it. There's a wonderful moment where she is straining. Her teeth are grit as she lugs this heavy thing. It is obviously heavy, like a sailor, over to her pod where she then loads it all up. Hops aboard and drives off, and once again, probably the smallest she has ever been in frame. Beautiful shot. We're seeing giant Star Destroyers and ships that have crashed, and she is tiny. As she zooms past, she is subsumed by this enormous world around her that she feels herself insignificant in. That's what I'm drawing from just the language of the film. We'll continue on. Then there's a shot of a vulture. I might be stretching here, but I'm pretty sure that the reason because they could have made any little puppet creature, or they could have just had no little puppet creature. It's obviously a bit of a homage to puppet creatures from A New Hope. But why did they choose a vulture? Well, yes, it's a desert, but I also think that it is perfectly legitimate interpretation to say that this is trying to imply that Rey is also sort of a vulture. She is a scavenger. That's why Rey, when you watch the frame, she zooms past and actually the vulture slams down. She goes between the vulture and its food, and so the vulture's sort of smacking down on her. I don't know, that might be a stretch, but I wanted to point it out just in case because I think that it is probably symbolic. But more importantly, she comes to the area where she unloads the things that she scavenged, and she drags them, heaving them bit by bit across the sand on her own as the sun is setting, implying that this is what she does every day, and this is the end of her day. What a day. She is dragging it across the sand, and by the way, they linger on this shot for, I believe, about 35 to 40 seconds, which is actually a pretty long time in a film. It may not sound very long, but when it's a one unbroken shot of literally just Rey dragging this thing across the sand over to where it needs to go, just lugging it, it obviously is meant to convey something. Rey is a working woman. She's blue collar. She has to do this all herself. It's probably going to result in some medical complications when she gets older because of how much she does this. It's also probably made her strong, but it is not glamorous work. Once again, we might think it's glamorous because we like characters who are strong and whatnot, but in the story, this is not glamorous. Then we get a very important little scene. She is there, she is scrubbing out the sand and dirt and dust and contaminants from the parts so that they are better to present them to Unkar Plutt so that maybe she can get more food. We'll get to that in a moment, but she is scrubbing them out with water on her own. She's sitting there and then she looks across the table. She's just in her own little world. She looks across the table and there is an old crone. I have never seen anyone reference this part of the film. I don't know why, because it is like the most obviously symbolic thing. This is obviously symbolic because Rey stops and just stares at this old crone for like 20 seconds. I don't think it's quite that long, but the point is that the old crone is doing the exact same thing that Rey is doing, across the table, scrubbing out the stuff. And the old crone kind of sort of looks a bit like Rey. The point is that Rey is realizing, or this is a way of objectifying a fear that Rey has already had, that she is going to grow old and die on this god-forsaken sand ball on the outer rim or wherever Jakku is supposed to be. She's going to grow old, become an ugly old pathetic crone doing the same thing until she probably slips and snaps her neck inside of a Star Destroyer and no one will care. This is a very important shot. More importantly, it brings in that notion that Rey is terrified of the fact that she is stuck here. Also, I'd like to point out, I might be stretching here, but that cord there over on the side looks kind of like a noose. That, in all likelihood, that might be unintentional, but then again, when you're setting up a shot and you've been setting up shots as part of your living, you think to put things in there. It looks like a noose to me, and that adds to the notion that this woman's going to die soon, and she's going to die on Jakku, having done nothing with her life, nothing important. This is what Rey is afraid of that being her future in front of her. She pauses for a moment, and then an angry little thing, I guess, whatever that is, gets angry at her and I guess tells her to get back to work. I don't think it's because he's a supervisor. I think it's because he wants his turn. But it doesn't really matter. It just shows that people don't actually really like Rey, because no one really likes anybody around here. There certainly are not people congratulating her. She does not have friends. She continues to scrub harder. And then we see her standing in front of Unkar Plutt, which is, by the way, Simon Pegg in a blobfish costume. I mean, it's CGI for the face and stuff. But anyway, she is presenting her wares before this fellow, and he declares that what she has brought is worth 1/4 portion, which is this. I love this little piece of set design, by the way. I love the quarter portion. It looks so real and gritty. Obviously, it took like no money to make. It's a Ziploc air suctioned bag with some white and black sand in it, but it gets the point across. She's not being paid in money. She is being paid in food. She is basically a slave. Not actually a slave, because she is working and making transactions, but she's being paid in food. This is not a good life. Okay? She is paid in 1/4 portion, and as we're going to see in a minute, by the way, there's a wonderful shot where she's just kind of looking up. She doesn't dare to actually glare at him, but she hates this guy. That's how I at least interpret this, and certainly when she is walking away from Unkar Plutt, she is looking just frustrated, and as anyone would be when that is all you have to eat, and this is your life. Once again, I'd like to note we have not seen her eat anything until he slams that thing down. Rey is probably malnourished. Daisy Ridley doesn't look malnourished, but what are you going to do? Anyway, she walks away, and then she skedaddles on home. We get obviously sort of a kind of homage shot to A New Hope with the sun fading down. But also this is important because it does establish that this is the end of her day. Her day's done. This is her life. This is how it goes. And by the way, she hasn't talked with anybody. She has not said a word of dialogue. In fact, the only word of dialogue in all of these scenes was Unkar Plutt saying this stuff is worth 1/4 portion. That's the only interaction she's had with another person. This is obviously deliberate. She has not talked with anybody. She has no friends. And later in the film, Kylo Ren is going to point out that she is incredibly lonely. And these are some of the things that she is having to bear while she is living here on Jakku. She gets back to her house, and look, there's a flower, except it's dead. Because we're just trying to establish that this is depressing. You'll see that those are its weird petals there, and then there's what looks kind of like a bell next to it. But yeah, flowers wilted, death, decay, hope dying, those sorts of things. Also, oh look, there's a small little stick figure thing, which is obviously a handmade stuffed animal that looks kind of like a pilot person. Because Rey apparently knows about the stories. If I were the filmmakers, I would have made this more clear, by the way, as I'm going to discuss later. I would have made it very clear. I would have had her have maybe some old holo projector that like shows, I don't know what the equivalent of maybe like propaganda films for the rebellion's effort or something. They didn't have any of those, but something that would have made it more clear that she does know things, like where this person came from. Obviously, she must have something like that in order for her to know how to make this, or someone made it for her. But as we're going to see, she does have some kind of familiarity or nostalgia for the rebellion and what it represents. But anyway, this is depressing because it's obviously a doll, meaning that Rey has been here for a while, and this is also reinforced when we get this wonderful shot where Rey is marking with a little piece of chalk on a board how long she has been here, and it has obviously been a long time. I'm going to get a ton of flack for this, but I would like to point out that within a pretty short-ish space of time, we have established with zero dialogue Rey's predicament, Rey's hopes and dreams. She, in a very emotional way, feel that malaise, and this has been established without any dialogue at all. This is very good filmmaking, in my opinion. This is very good filmmaking, and the reason I'm going to get flack is because I think that this is, as far as the use of the media of film goes, this is a better establishment of a character and their predicament than Luke Skywalker was established in A New Hope, because that had dialogue. I'm not saying that was poorly established or hating on Luke Skywalker or anything. I'm just saying I actually like this better because I respond very well to visual aspects of film, especially when there is no dialogue, as you can probably see with some of my own creations with my amateur filmmaking or kind of bad filmmaking, but whatever. We get a wonderful shot, which I love. I don't really know why I love it, but she pours, we see what the quarter portion is, how it's actually food, because she pours it into the water. She stirs it with her finger because she doesn't have utensils. It turns into a little bread thing while she scoops the meat into her pan, and we realize that this is what she eats. This is her nourishment. This is her nutrients for the day, apparently. She has some water, she goes outside, she sits down, she starts eating the food, and you can't really quite tell, but there's a little spot, I'll try to point it out on the monitor. She is sitting there watching a ship leave Jakku, just in case we didn't get it. She doesn't like it here, and her life sucks. And once again, we're going to get another lovely shot, which... here's a shot of her licking the bowl, first of all. She's licking the bowl clean because she has no food. Then she puts on the helmet, which she probably would have had to have gotten from a dead guy. I mean, I'm just saying. I don't know for sure, but I don't know where else she would have gotten that. But she puts it on just to drive home the nostalgia. She feels like a little kid. And then there's this shot, which no one else has pointed out that I know of either. She is literally sitting underneath the foot of the dead Empire. Okay, she is under the foot. She is under the boot. She is a blue-collar worker who is being exploited by her sort of employer, and she is underneath the heel of the remnants of the defeated Empire, or however you want to interpret that, but she is under the foot. They could have easily had her from the back or coming out of the front, however they wanted to do it, but they in fact, that would have made more sense technically, because why would there's not enough room there in the leg for her to live. She must be living on the actual inside of it further up or something like that. But no, they choose to put her underneath the foot because she is under the boot of the man. This is important. Anyway, she's sitting there reminiscing, wearing that little thing. I just love this little moment. It's adorable. But then she hears something. She stands up. The helmet is actually too big for her, by the way, because it skews aside on her head, so that she has to pull it off quickly. She is looking very nervous as she hears some noises, probably because in this environment she's had to get used to the notion that people might come in the middle of the night to kill her and take her food. Anyway, she goes running instantly. She grabs her staff. She runs up the sand dune, and we see what is making the noise that disturbed her so much. It is Tito, is what she calls him. That creepy little alien. She shouts out to him in another language, which I think it's easy to think that she learned on this planet. It's a dialect of some kind that people understand. She learned it, and by the way, she pronounces the words very well. I always like listening to her say it, but this isn't helpful to the analysis, so I should probably shut up about such things. She yells at Tito. We don't know what she yells. There's been some complaints about this scene because obviously what happens is she runs up and is like, yo, let go of that droid. And Tito's like, fine, screw you. And he walks off, and people have been pointing out, why did he walk off? Like, why was he afraid of Rey? I think This is established somewhat with this shot because she pulls out a knife, and it is established that they do know each other, so they've probably had some form of tussles or something in the past, some disagreements and some kind of an understanding, not in the sense of Tito does agree that Rey will be able to defeat him, and it is true that he is like a tiny little thing. He's not very big. He does have that big pack animal, but I don't think the pack animal is very violent. Anyway, it's left intentionally vague, which is why they're speaking in another language, because it's not terribly important. What's important is that Rey does sort of save BB-8, and she says that's just Tito, wants you for parts. He has no respect for anyone, which is a nice little line to learn, because we do get some likability from Rey here. We learn that she does not like it when other people don't respect her, or other people she empathizes with that because she's felt like she's under the boot of other people. And so she, in a sense, this wasn't so much for BB-8 as it was for her to fulfill her own principles. Anyway, she fixes BB-8's antenna because, oh, she's just so nice. More because it's just sort of a decent-ish thing to do. Nima outpost is that way. Stay off Kelvin Ridge and don't go where the sand dunes are because you'll fall in and drown in the sand. See ya, goodbye. And literally sets BB-8 off in the same direction that Tito is still walking. So I don't see how this could be a flaw on the part of the filmmakers. I think it is obviously to show that Rey, yes, she has saved BB-8, but she does not actually want BB-8's company. Much less does she want to have to house somebody. Don't follow me, town is that way. She tells BB-8 to hit the road, so she is kind, but she's also abrasive. She gets angry when BB-8 comes, and the only reason that she allows BB-8 to follow her is because BB-8 obviously emotionally manipulates her by being cute. And finally, she's like, fine, you can come with me, but in the morning you're going to go. She's nice, but she's also not nice. She's certainly not a perky little Disney princess, in my opinion, but anyway, we'll continue forward. We have some scenes in between, and then she knows I know all about waiting, and we learn that she is waiting for her family in one of the only moments so far where she's actually talking with someone where she seems to show some softness. She says she's waiting for her family. She smiles, and I just got to tell you that the way that she acts this, it is completely obvious to me, and we do learn later that she knows perfectly well that they are not coming back. And this is very interesting, because she has just said here that they're going to be back, but we know later on that she knows in her heart they're not coming back. So she still refuses to leave Jakku, even though she knows that it's useless, because of some weird placed loyalty or despondency or an unwillingness to believe consciously, even though she knows unconsciously, that she has been abandoned straight up. That is why she's here. Her family did not care enough about her. They have left her here, and she is in denial about it. This is a very interesting twist on what Luke Skywalker's situation was. Luke Skywalker wanted to leave too, but the thing that was holding him back, ironically, was his family, but his family was actually being there telling him, no, don't leave. Rey is stuck here because she is choosing not to leave, because she is in denial. It's an interesting switch. She is held back by herself. Luke was physically held back by his family. Actually, Luke is a little bit inconsistent, because the moment that he actually gets a chance to leave the planet with Obi-Wan, he doesn't jump. He says, no, I've got to get back and help with the harvest, and he only leaves when his parents are killed, which is a great scene, by the way, in that film. I love that scene where he goes and the music's playing. Anyway, the point being that Rey is in serious denial, and it is ruining her life. She is not here against her will. She is choosing to punish herself in this way. Anyway, she goes to Unkar. Unkar is only going to give her 1/2 portion for this material, even though Rey protests that last week they were a 1/2 portion each, and I believe that this is very obviously because Unkar Plutt is trying to make his next offer all the more interesting, because he is ripping her off for all of the other parts so that he can then try to buy the droid. He says, I'll pay for him. Rey looks up, disturbed but still interested, and he says 60 portions. This is so well established because we have just seen what 60 portions means. When this happened, I salivated a little bit. Obviously, maybe I'm getting way too into this film, but when he slams down all of those portions down on the table, she is like, this is going to last me for a lifetime. Obviously not that long, but this is a lot. And the people in the background are oohing and eyeing. And she thinks about it. She rakes her hands over the quarter portion pieces. And she's thinking to herself, well, gee, maybe I should sell this droid. Why doesn't she sell the droid? Because she just had this whole conversation about how she was abandoned by her family. And she knows, and also she spent all of this effort the day before rescuing BB-8. She knows that this would be wrong for her to do, and so this establishes a choice on her part, that she would rather hold to her principles than get food. And so yes, we do like Rey, but she did think about it. She didn't just outright say, no, you swine. And anyway, she decides to go with the droid. She walks off, and by the way, she is not looking very happy when she stalks off. She does not even say, come on, to BB-8, I believe, though I think I might be wrong about that. She just stalks off and BB-8 follows. We got some scenes in between, and then we jump back to this. Some people try to steal BB-8. People who are, we learn later, from Unkar Plutt, just a little side bit. And yes, she shows off her skills, that she is able to violently take care of herself, to defend her own. A lot of people I know were irritated by this because there's the shot of Finn running up to help, because Finn's a good guy. But she's able to take care of herself, and he sort of stops, and he's like, oh, I guess she's not a Disney princess. Whoop, feminism. And obviously people got irritated with that, and I'll get a little bit more into that. Why? I understand. People are tired of feeling like this is being shoved in their face and having female characters be jerks to males, as, well, I'll get into that in a little bit. But yes, he runs up, but she can defend herself. No knight in shining armor here. Even though he could have done it, because the point was not that he would have gotten destroyed and couldn't rescue her, it's just that she was able to handle it herself. She beats them both up because she's lived on the scavenger planet and is good at fighting. I don't know who taught her how to fight, though, and that is an important thing. She would have had to have had a mentor for fighting and for knowing how to scavenge and look around in the ships. It might have been Unkar Plutt, but we don't really know. We don't know, for instance, who taught Luke how to pilot a ship. It might have been his uncle. It might have been someone else. The point is that it doesn't really matter how he learned it. The point is that he does know it, because it would clutter up the story if we had this other figure who... The point is that they've learned the skill. But anyway, that's just a side point. Oh, yes, and then BB-8 identifies Finn as wearing Poe Dameron's jacket, and Rey instantly runs ferociously over to beat the living crap out of him. And why is this? Why is she so angry? Well, because A, she just spent all of this, she just gave up the greatest score of her life for this dumb little droid. And 2, she feels for this droid because this droid was abandoned, as we had established earlier in the scene. And so when she sees the chance of the person who seems to have made it so that the droid will not be able to become unabandoned or found, because Rey probably thinks that Finn killed whoever it was and stole their jacket, Rey is projecting her own anger with whoever it might have been who prevented her family from coming back in her little denial story, and is now going to beat the crap out of him. So she goes running. Finn runs away, but she knows her way around this place better because she's lived here her whole life. Smacks him in the face. He falls down on the ground. They have a whole little conversation, but he's wearing the jacket, and she realizes, so if you're not a foe to Poe Dameron, then you must be with the Resistance. Finn instantly goes with this notion because he doesn't want to be identified as a stormtrooper. This is actually a smart move. And she instantly believes him. which is another interesting thing. I think they could have established this better, by the way. As I mentioned before, I wish that they had shown that she's basically like a Star Wars fangirl. That would have been very interesting to me anyway, if that's what they were establishing, and that she's just instantly ready to believe that he is, no, actually you are a resistance fighter. I am on board with this, no questions asked, and she's just into it, and he obviously is not anything to do with that, and he holds up the facade. Also, she is enamored by the fact that BB-8 has a secret mission. Oh, and she also is enamored with the notion of Luke Skywalker because she thinks that he's a myth, but obviously she doesn't want to believe that he's a myth. All these little things could have been, I think, a little more better emotionally established if we had seen in a previous scene her reading about the legend of Luke Skywalker or something like this. But we didn't get it, so that is unfortunate. Then this is a very important point as far as a lot of the controversy about her Mary Sue status. They see a pair of stormtroopers walking towards them, and Finn, and this is very important, Finn, he is or was a stormtrooper. He knows what's up. There is a very knowing look on her face, and Rey is kind of oblivious. She sees them walking towards her, but she's never really had to deal with stormtroopers as far as we know, which makes a lot of sense. But Finn does, and he knows precisely what to look for. He knows how they work because he is one. And when he sees them walking towards them, also the fact that he knows that they are coming after him, probably, so he sees them. Rey does not understand this. Finn grabs her hand and drags her away, and Rey is very upset that Finn has grabbed her hand and is dragging her away because she's feminist or whatever. People have gotten irritated with this. I'm going to analyze this a bit differently. He grabs her hand, she gets upset, but then instantly after they are shot at, and they are shot right around where they were just standing. If Rey had not moved, they probably would have killed them both. So Finn just saved Rey's life by grabbing her hand, even though she is annoyed by this, because she does not like other people's help. This is going to be established a number of times in the future. She wants to take care of herself, which is understandable because she's been alone for so long, and also she was abandoned by her family, so she doesn't trust others to help her. As we're going to see later on, this is also a bit of an arc for her because she starts to learn to allow people to take her hand to help her out, or to take other people's hands, or to offer a hand. So we're going to see this. But anyway, Finn does, I believe, save her life here by taking her away. She gets irritated. She's like, let go of my hand, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, whatever, I don't care, just as long as you're running with me. He doesn't have anything to say about it. They run into a thing. Rey is freaking out now, by the way. She says they're shooting at both of us. And he says, yeah, they saw you with me, you're marked. And she is very scared. She is not toughing it out. She is very scared. She is not toughing this out very well, but then she lashes out in anger at Finn because that's how she deals with these sorts of things. She gets irritated with people. These are sort of classic character traits that you see with some characters. They lash out with anger when they're nervous. That's how they sort of demonstrate their power so that they don't feel quite so small in the situation. Anyway, she's irritated, and Finn does point out, by the way, I'm not the one who chased you down with a stick. No one ever mentions this when they're irritated with Finn and Rey's relationship, that Finn does backtalk her here about that and points out that, yeah, that was a little bit crazy, lady, and you've kind of got yourself into this problem yourself, and also I still haven't forgotten that you probably nearly broke my nose with that stick. Then she checks on BB-8, which is a sweet little moment, because she is connected with BB-8 because they're both waiting for people, or were waiting for people, but then Finn shushes them both. Wonderful acting here, in my opinion. Maybe you think it's too over the top, but he hears the ion engines. Rey does not know what those are. Finn knows what's going on with the stormtroopers, and Rey does not. Once again, Finn grabs her hand, and she gets irritated. It's meant as a bit of a played for laughs moment, but once again, they run out of that thing and it gets blown up. It gets blown to smithereens, flung forward. So once again, Finn has saved her life because he knows what the iron blasters are going to aim for first. They're going to aim for the buildings or whatever their strategy specifically is, because he's the one who dragged her out of there. So yeah, she's annoyed by him taking her hand, but this turns out to actually have been in her benefit. So she's really just being kind of ungrateful. They fall down. She is not quite as shell-shocked as him. There's a fun little moment where he asks if she's okay, and she's sort of irritated by this because he's like, obviously I'm okay because I'm getting you up. And then she offers him her hand, and he grabs it, which is a nice little moment because now she's like, okay, I understand the situation. Let's get over to a ship to get out of here. They're able to be reciprocal. They help each other. He says, we need a pilot. She says, we've got one. Later on, she does say that she has piloted ships before. She has never left the planet, but she has flown around. We never see this, but she does say it. So you can complain that this was not set up well enough, but it is established. Two different things. Objectively, it's established. Subjectively, you may not have felt it, but later on, and we'll look at those slides, but she does establish that she knows how to pilot things. She has not piloted the Millennium Falcon, but we'll get into that in a moment. They run over to the Millennium Falcon. She seems to know how the ship is, probably because she has literally spent her whole life clamoring around inside of ships. They have their little chase scene. They both work together, and then at the end, they are both very congratulatory to each other on both their shooting and their cooperation and their teamwork, and oh, it's so great, yay, I don't know. No one trained you how, this is Finn asking, no one trained you how to fly? She says, I've flown some ships, but I've never left the planet. Your last shot was dead on, that was amazing. So yes, it is established that she has flown ships. Now, you can argue, how on earth did she get so good at flying the Millennium Falcon? And my reply to this is, have you ever flown the Millennium Falcon? And have you ever seen anyone who has never flown the Millennium Falcon fly the Millennium Falcon again? As far as I know, and you can call out my shenanigans on this in the comments, you can call me out on my shenanigans for this, but no one in Star Wars except for Han Solo, Lando Calrissian, and Chewbacca have flown the Millennium Falcon, and all of them have already flown it before. We never see the learning curve for how difficult it is to learn how to fly the Millennium Falcon, so it's never established that it's particularly different from any other ship. It's another ship that you fly, and it's very possible that things are just intuitive to these people, how to fly, if you're a pilot. So it's not so much a matter that I would also assume, frankly, that if it's such a good ship, it should probably be somewhat more intuitive to fly, because that's an important part of being able to get a ship to work well, is if it's a bit more intuitive and the controls and things work well. I am not bothered at all by the fact that she can fly the Millennium Falcon, because she literally just said twice now that yes, she can fly ships. She has flown ships before. This was not completely out of the blue. And so, yes, she did fly it, and they were working together to escape. It's a great little moment. So I don't know why people are quite so bent out of shape over it. Then there's a nice little moment where the ship seems to threaten to be about to blow up, and Rey is freaking out because she's like, oh, holy crap, are we all going to die? There's some scenes in between. She starts to explain she's got to get back to Jakku. Even when she's off the planet, finally, she's out of the planet, she is asserting that she has to get back to Jakku. She is not going to see BB-8 through this entire mission. This is in her mind for the whole thing. She's never actually planning on leaving for very long. She's like, I have to get back there because my family might come back while I'm gone. And if they don't find me there, then they're going to leave and I'll never be able to see them again. She's a little bit freaked out, but she is still willing to take them as far as a certain point. But then she's going to go back to Jakku, to Unkar Plutt, and everything that he's going to do to her for what she's done. Oh, and also, she gets irritated with Finn because he is not finding the thing that she wants. This is such an ENFP-ish and ESTJ-ish thing to do, by the way. I've had this moment, not quite with such an angry person, but I have had this with an ENFP where I'm not able to find a thing that they want me to find, and they keep on saying no, 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 because they're not able to point it close enough, and finally I find it. Rey, by the way, gets irritated very easily in this film because that's how she deals with things. She's kind of abrasive, and this is not set up as a good thing. It's set up as a funny thing because it's a character moment, but it's not necessarily a good thing. Finn asks her, why would you go back? She gets irritated with him and says it's not any of your business. Then there's a nice little moment here where a ship apparently has seized them with a tractor beam. Finn is so freaked out because he knows what the First Order is capable of, that they can blow up 5 planets at once. And so he is freaked out that they're going to catch them again. And he puts his hand on Rey and hoists himself up. And she's like, get off of me. Anyway, they both hatch a plan. Finn, with his knowledge of stormtroopers, says, yes, let's try to release that poisonous gas. This is Finn's idea, by the way, not Rey's. But Rey is the one who's able to actually carry it out. They go ahead and try to do it. They pull out the masks, and this is where the film starts to go a bit downhill for me. Which probably sounds odd to a lot of people, because as far as I can tell, it's where it picked up for other people, because this is the point where Han Solo jumps onto the ship. Harrison Ford did a great job. He's a great actor. Han Solo's a great character. It's nice to see them again. I did not like them in the film, but I just wanted to see more adventures with Rey and Finn. I just wanted to see them growing, learning more about each other. Everything was going right along, and then suddenly I have to be reminded that this is in a series of Star Wars films. And suddenly Han Solo is there, and it's like, oh, and there's just, it's like a black hole. He sucks it away, but it's not that I was waiting for someone more charismatic to come on screen at all. I actually like Rey and Finn in the story more, and I mean, I like Han Solo and everything, but it's like, for some reason, I just feel like, what are you doing here? And this is one of the moments, for me anyway, that it feels like it's weighed down by the fact that it feels obliged to please the fans and also be a sequel. They could have all been dead, everybody but maybe Luke Skywalker, because he's a mystical Jedi. That would have made more sense for this all to be myth, like literally myth, because everybody's been dead for a long time. Start everything over. We don't need the other characters here. We're starting with new characters. This is a new Star Wars story. It doesn't need to be hooked in. These are just my thoughts, though. It irritates. And yes, they work him in very well into the film because he gets killed. It's not at all that he's shoehorned in or anything. They wrote the plot. I just, for some reason, wish that this... I didn't have to worry about that. I don't know why. I think I like Finn and Rey. I like their relationship. Maybe there's some unconscious thing where it's reminding me of relationships I've had with other people. That might be it, but anyway. Then there's a moment she does not know what a Rathtar is, but Finn does. Finn kind of explains it along with Han Solo. There's this whole scene where with the Kanji Club and whatnot, and Finn and Rey go hide under the floorboards. Rey gets a notion that if they close the blast doors in the corridor, they can help out Han Solo so he can escape. She goes to reset the fuses, but pulls the wrong fuses and releases the Rathtars. This nearly kills everybody, by the way, which is kind of a good thing because, I mean, it helps, but it is not what she intended to do, meaning that she messed up her mechanic skills. Oh, and then and she admits this is a huge mistake as they go crawling away. And then this is a very interesting moment. They run down the corridor. She's like, what does a Rathtar look like? And then they see it, and he's like, they look like that. The Rathtar is eating a person, by the way. Her hand goes up to her mouth. She is terrified and disgusted of this. Finn also is, but he is running away. And he takes her arm, her hand, and she doesn't resist. There is not a word out of her mouth this time about Finn grabbing her hand, partly because they've come to trust each other a bit more, and also because she is so horrified by this monster that is devouring people before her, how fast it's moving, how creepy it is, that she doesn't really care. But I would like to note that she does not mind at this point him grabbing her hand, and once again this kind of does help her, because if she just stood there looking transfixed at the thing, it would eat her. They go running. Finn is leading the way, but then Finn gets caught, and Rey does save the day. Though almost it doesn't quite work, it's only from a little bit of luck of being able to see the monitors. I love this moment where she's just looking and she is absolutely hopeless. She's terrified that, oh my gosh, I just lost someone who may have actually qualified as a friend. She rescues him, which is a nice moment. Perhaps a little bit contrived because Finn probably should have been eaten by the Rathtar by then, but I don't know how Rathars work, so whatever, and I like the notion that she closes the blast doors and saves him. Oh, and she doesn't take the credit. She just says it was lucky, which is a very ENFP joke because J.J. Abrams is an ENFP. This is a very ENFP-ish film in areas. There's a number of points in the way that things work out that just feel very ENFP to me. It's a taste thing. It's not really an objective thing. Anyway, then there's another famous scene. Famous, I should say infamous, because she seems to know more about ships than Han Solo. This is not true. They know equal amount, I believe, but she does kind of correct Han Solo. This is to be expected because she literally spends all day crawling around inside of dead ships. She knows so much about them. She knows what parts to scrap. If she didn't point out these things, then it would be kind of like, what's the point of her being a scavenger if, like, she didn't get any skills from it? Like, she should know these sorts of things. In fact, I think if this scene weren't in there, I would be more annoyed with Rey's character because it would obviously be, oh, well, she's just a scavenger in the story because scavengers are cool to people. But no, she's a scavenger because scavengers are insignificant, but it also gives her some blue-collar working skills. Also, I take this scene where she bypasses the compressor and she fixes things, and apparently she knows more about the ship than Han Solo does. I take this not so much to show that Rey is a genius and better than everybody else, but that Han Solo is old. Also, that he's a pilot. He was never a very good mechanic. This is established in The Empire Strikes Back. He's not able to fix his own ship. He's never been able to fix his own ship. Rey is able to fix his ship, which is probably why he offered her a job later on, because he's like, yeah, no, maybe I should keep this lady around because she seems to know her way around a ship better than I do. Though I think Han Solo is probably the better pilot, especially with going into lightspeed, because she has no idea how to do that. They did not go into lightspeed. She never took them into lightspeed because she's never been off-world. Anyway, I take this as trying to show that, yeah, he's getting kind of old, and this is sort of passing the torch. But anyway, also he doesn't thank her at all for bypassing the compressor. He goes and thanks Finn for saving Chewbacca, which is kind of a dick move. Then there's this little moment where she just says, I'm just a scavenger. Finn's the important one because he's the Resistance member, which makes Finn feel super guilty. But once again, she does not feel she is very important in this big, wide universe. And then another wonderful little moment where she says, I didn't know there was this much green in the whole galaxy, where she sees all of this green. This is a great little moment, and I think they played it as much as they could in a film where they felt like they needed to have a Han Solo character, not just Rey and Finn running around. Han Solo's great and all, but it just, it's like, now we have to have scenes with Han Solo. I don't know. I haven't developed those thoughts very well, so whatever, I should lay off that. Anyway, they stop. She is the first one out of the ship. She runs out. She takes in a big breath of fresh air and goes looking around. Beautiful moment. She is not in the desert anymore. Then we get a scene where she says, I think I can handle myself, when Han Solo tries to offer her a blaster. This is because she does not know how to use blasters. It's not because she's so good at blasters that she doesn't need a blaster. It's because she's good with a staff, and also she, as we've seen, doesn't like it when people hold her hand. She doesn't really like any kind of help from people. She wants to be independent. Also, she's probably trying to show off a bit to Han Solo here by saying, oh, I don't really need a blaster. I've got my staff because I'm cool. Space Dad. Anyway. But anyway, he kind of insists that she take it. We'll get back to the blaster, though, because she is actually... And it's frustrating because they could have done a very nice little thing where she really is just completely sucks with a blaster because she's never really used one. She does know what a blaster is, though, so she's not like an ignoramus. And that does make sense because she's grown up on this scavenger planet with people trying to kill her. But... later on, she does shoot some guys with a really good shot. You can say it's because of the Force, but I mean, whatever. I would have liked it better if she's just not good with it. But we'll get to that because it's not quite so cut and dry. She says, yes, I know how to use it. You pull the trigger. A little bit more to it than that. You got a lot to learn. Now, you can argue that, well, she doesn't have anything to learn because she's already perfect. I think it's been established that she's not perfect. She certainly is not whiny in the way that Luke was, and then later Luke was no longer whiny by the third film. She is not whiny, but she is in denial, and she also is abrasive and does not like other people's help. Because they're trying to do something different with her character and not make her exactly like Luke. So they didn't make her whiny, they gave her other things. We skip forward a bit. They're in with Maz Kanata, and Finn basically admits that he's a total coward and does not want to face the First Order, which is understandable because he knows they can blow up a ton of planets. He's like, we need to get away from them because they are going to kill us. Rey is flabbergasted at this because she has been led to believe that he is a brave, resistant soldier person. Maybe not brave, but certainly better than this. But then he leaves. This is a very important point in the film. Finn, although he does offer for her to come with him, he ultimately abandons her, just straight up. Gee, I wonder when this happened before. Well, it would be when she was a tiny little child. Finn says, I'm not a hero. I'm not a hero like you think I am. You have idealized me. She tells him not to go, but he goes, and she's got this look on her face. She is devastated, and then she is standing there watching as he leaves, and then she starts to hear a girl crying. Why is this? Well, because this is a reliving of her being ultimately abandoned by her family at the beginning. That is why she starts having these Force visions. She is at her lowest point. In fact, she goes on a little bit of an archetypal hero's journey because she descends down the steps into the basement and then goes up to this chest, which symbolizes secret knowledge that she gains in the underworld. It's a, Jungian thing. It's not super important. But she touches the lightsaber, has a bunch of freaky visions, including her as a child. This is actually a really heartbreaking moment. It's this little girl being pulled away by this abusive blobfish while her family leaves her there. She is traumatized by this, obviously, and now she is reliving it because Finn has literally just abandoned her. She thought that he cared. She thought that he was going to stick around and that no, not everybody is like her family was and is going to eventually leave her. Why didn't she want to take up the job with Han Solo? Probably because she doesn't actually have any faith that Han Solo is going to be a very good father figure. She is better off staying on the planet. She can't trust anybody until her family comes back and reestablishes the trust. She needs to have that. She feels like she needs that. Otherwise, she's never going to believe that other people will come back for her. She watches as the ship flies away. Then we get a flash forward to her in the forest. Kylo Ren coming after her with a lightsaber, and she is freaking out. She falls back. Maz Kanata has a talk with her. She is completely flipping out. I shouldn't have gone in there. But Maz Kanata is kind of being like, you're the chosen one, Harry. You're a wizard. And this is a very important shot. They linger on it for a little bit. Maz Kanata reaches out her hand, and Rey takes it. Rey is accepting help from other people. She's recognizing that she can't do this alone. This is the first sort of hint that she's starting to get that way. It's not perfect, but, what are you going to do? But she refuses. She says, no, I am not going to meet my destiny. And she runs away. And also from the possibility of finally getting beyond her family. Because she still doesn't want to leave Jakku. Spiritually, she is still there. She runs off into the forest, she looks back, she's distraught, and we really don't know what her plan is here. And then there's an important moment where she hears the ion engines, which she learned what those are from Finn, and she knows what's going to happen. She is very scared. And then we have the lovely scene where she does shoot 2 stormtroopers, although the first time she tries to shoot him, she forgets about the safety. I think it would have been better if she didn't say safety. She's like, what the heck is wrong with this thing? And then she gets shot at while she tries to figure it out, and then maybe a lucky shot hits him. I mean, I can tell what they were probably going for, but it is true that she shoots two guys down, but she also misses. There is an important point, too, though, that when she shoots the first guy and he dies, this is obviously the first time she has ever killed anybody. And this is also an obvious hint, I think, to the possibility of her going to the dark side and her starting to realize what that means. Because she did just run away from her hard responsibility, taking the quick and easy way, and now she's killing people with a gun. So, because we get this shot where she is like ferocious and she's just shooting these stormtroopers and getting her anger and angst out on them. But then she gets chased by them. And finally, we get a much better moment where Kylo Ren hunts her down. She's going through this little forest area and he's coming at her. She starts shooting at him. Obviously, it doesn't do anything because he deflects the bolts. They blast. And then she gets cornered by him. He deflects the bolts and finally she gets stopped. This is a very pathetic moment for her. This is sort of one of her lowest points, when she's just like, "Mrah," and trying to kill him because she's terrified of Kylo Ren, and he stops her dead in her tracks using the Force. And then he proceeds to mind probe her. And this is an important point that I need to discuss. People keep on arguing about the fact that Rey was able to withstand mind probing later on in the film, and that she learned Jedi mind tricks and she learned these Force things when Luke had to train. First of all, Luke demonstrates some Force ability or some connection with the Force in the first film. But second of all, and far more importantly, we have no idea how the Force works. Everybody talks as though they know how the Force works in the same way that they talk as though they know how the Millennium Falcon is piloted and how difficult it is for all people. We don't know how the Force works. We know some vague things about the Force. We know that it's obviously inspired by Eastern thought, sort of. But we really don't know anything. And the only time that really someone kind of tried to add more lore before was when they tried to introduce midichlorians. And everyone freaked out because... I can talk about that for another thing. It's actually, I think, a very interesting personality thing, but... we don't know how the Force works. We don't know how any of these abilities work. Basically, it's just shenanigans to do cool things and also to represent the archetype of having some kind of a divine power that you have managed to take control of. Though it's kind of weird that you can use it for good or evil, implying the Force is amoral. Even though this is obviously a moral universe. Anyway, it confuses me and bugs me, but what also bugs me is when people talk as though it was like clear as day how the Force works, and like what the learning curve is and how you learn things and what like Kylo Ren has to do mentally and like what are the restraints, when can he freeze people, when can't he freeze people, how does the mind probing work. These are important things, because at this point he sort of like knows that she has the map, but he doesn't actually look at the map. Apparently he has to do more, but we don't know how any of this works, and we've never known how any of it works throughout any of Star Wars. We don't know how Yoda moved or did his telekinesis. We don't know why Yoda was able to do it, but Luke couldn't. I mean, yes, we get that line that Luke didn't believe, but what does that really mean? Like, how do you know when you're believing hard enough? Like, or when you're believing well enough or anything? And I don't know. Anyway, it just irritates me. Anyway, she is then interrogated by Kylo Ren and freaks out because he's probably going to chop her head off, and then he mind probes her and she is freaking out because she can't do anything about it. He realizes she's seen the map. He then goes all Black Knight on her, like Princess Bride, and carries her on board the ship. Oh, and then she's interrogated. There's a whole section where he says she's a scavenger, she is nothing, and he's now going to get inside of her head. By the way, this is a very uncomfortable scene because I just can't help but think of, like, harassment when I'm watching this. Like, because he's got her strapped to a chair, and now he's going to violate her mind, and it's like, ugh, gall. Like... not happy. Like, look at that. That's really, really creepy. Anyway, then he points out how lonely she is. She tells him to get out of her head. Oh, he also points out that she can't sleep, that she's desperate to sleep. she's got a lot of problems that she's dealing with and trying to figure out how to overcome. You can argue that they did not establish that well enough, but Kylo Ren is literally talking about them right here. Oh, he also mentions an ocean and the whole Han Solo thing, and this is the point where she kind of flips out a bit with him. She gets very angry when he starts talking about Han Solo because she has decided that she likes him and she does want him as a father figure. She says, "I'm not giving you anything," and as far as we can tell, basically what happens here is by virtue of her being kind of sort of a chosen one sort of thing going on, she is able to grasp things with the Force faster because that's, a trope and an archetype. And she resists his mind probing. However, on Earth that is supposed to work, and she actually enters his mind a little bit because there's some kind of weird connection. My point is that, this you can't really argue this makes her overpowered, not because it doesn't make her maybe feel that way, but because you have no idea what the power level has to be in order to do these things. No one knows how these things are done or what the effort is. If she was lifting a ton of bricks, then we would understand because we know how much a ton of bricks weighs and we know who can lift tons of bricks and who can't. We don't know how that works with the Force, especially because the Force does not work in terms of magnitude and so forth. Anyway, she points out his flaw. Everybody is very surprised by this, by the way. Everybody is kind of like, how the heck did she withstand Kylo Ren? What is going on here? You're actually a very powerful Jedi. How did she do this? Kylo Ren says she is untrained, but she's stronger than she knows. This is an important point. They recognize that she has not received training, but they also recognize that she is a very powerful Jedi that the Force has chosen, or something, however that's supposed to work. Anyway, he says, if what you say about the girl is true, bring her to me, which then, as Mahler has pointed out in his very good critiques, this is just not followed up on really in The Last Jedi, except that he's bring her to me so that I can find Luke Skywalker. It's just stupid. Anyway, then she learns how to do Jedi mind tricks, which she kind of sort of was already basically learning before because she was in Kylo Ren's head. And also it's a callback to before, but I'm okay with it because it takes her 2 tries to do it. And also, the stormtroopers are supposed to be weak-minded, and it didn't work the first time, but whatever, people didn't like it. I thought it was a nice little triumphant moment, but then there's a very important point. Remember that the last time that Finn saw Rey, or rather Rey saw Finn, was when Finn abandoned her on the planet. He left, and she did not see anything more of her, or any more of Finn. So this is the next time that she sees Finn, he has returned for her. This is a beautiful moment in the film, because up to this point it has been established that she feels so lonely because she was abandoned, then Finn abandoned her, she doesn't want to trust anybody, she feels so lonely and she thinks that Finn abandoned her and she's having to deal with that, but Finn comes back. And that's why it's important that when Chewie says whatever Chewie says, and she realizes this was your idea, and she just embraces him and starts crying again, and it's just a really sweet moment because she realizes, oh, it's like her family coming back for her. Her real family isn't going to come back, but at least Finn did. This is a great moment. It's so great. I wish the film focused 100% on them, but anyway. Also, she acknowledges that she's not 100% sure how she escaped because it's crazy Force stuff, but apparently she's, chosen one, raw material that needs to be trained by, I don't know, Luke Skywalker. We're going to skip way ahead. This is the last part I'm really going to kind of talk about. It's when they're in the forest and they face off against Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren has been shot in the kidney. He is leaking out blood all over the snow, as it establishes in one of the shots. He then throws Rey against a tree. Finn fights him. Rey wakes up. They have a fight. Anyway, the point is that a lot of people got very up in arms about the battle because they felt that it made Kylo a wuss. that's irrelevant as far as what was established in the film. You can say that, yes, that's how it felt. You can discuss that that's how you felt about what happened. I'll discuss how I felt by what happened, but you can't say that they did not set up parameters to explain how Rey was able to beat him. He's bleeding out of his kidney. He's also very angry. He also was commanded not to kill her, but to bring her to Snoke, so he can't kill her. Also, most of the fight she is not winning, but he is pursuing her, fighting his way through, and it is only near the very end where she kind of gets a special Force climactic moment thingy where she's able to suddenly beat him, which is, that's what the Force does. That's what the Force did for Luke, the end of A New Hope. I always took it to mean that the Force helped him to make the shot, right? Because he didn't use his targeting systems. Anyway, that's all I've got